Chapter 50. They sent me to the doctor. After a few weeks of a moment when young professor into her apartment, young woman told him something. It wasn't good news, but she wanted to speak with him. Why? He was so happy that didn't noted a sadness in her voice. They think how I am mad. This is a normal procedure these days. If they saw anyone who think better of their friend, then they as soon as possible pronounce that person as mad. She sits slowly next to the old worm cooker. Who? The professor didn't understand. Police sad service, new politicians groups. Well, it is better to be in the hospital than death. This is some kind of warning, she softly explained, as she was afraid how someone could heard what she was telling about. Sometimes we say things that we do not really think as it sounded. Maybe that was just a mistake. He didn't know what to think. He just couldn't expect it that something like those still has been present. You act as you are from yesterday. You should know very well that fight for leadership is dirty. She turned to him, and it was a note of anger in her attitude. Sorry, but I think that we should do something about it. This man, in the moment, found out how he was deeply in love with the woman across him. For the past few weeks, she moved in the front of his eyes as a dream. She wired around her sensibility and beauty, but she was at the same time so far away from him. His friends didn't show up, and they couldn't explain what happened with him. Only what they should did could be to wait. The young woman laugh stopped Professor Thoughts. She was laughing and laughing louder and louder, then became a hysteric sound of one person that could made. Trouble and trouble, he said something. I'll tell you the secret. If you want to stay alive, it is important to listen. She said, really ready to give up from everything. Oh, I did lost days, what something, and then I said in the order, so it's sounded different. Sorry, I wanted to show you something, but I forgot what. She was circling around as lost something. Never mind. He slowly took her hand. It was cold, even that inside of the room was very, very warm. We have to think. You have to go away. She didn't say anything, only her beautiful eyes were opened and waited for a little hope which could get her out of the situation. When this evil will stop, asked with low voice. She was broken. Is there anything after? Was that a question what young man asked himself million times, but unfortunately didn't find solution, and it was the same how he didn't know what to say, and it was horrible, because young woman needed a good explanation. Why people don't like me, she said again. Too much tragedies I cannot understand. In that moment, on his mind was how to help her, as she didn't have anyone else except him on and her small boy. The revolution was so hot. Everywhere around was militant and demonstrators. Around were militants and demonstrators. People who tried to run away from the city. Panic was everywhere. Professor continued his story. I didn't plan and plan got myself into the politic. Only what I had on my mind was how to protect and help that woman and to her boy. But that put me into the dangerous what could was fatal for me, said Dominic carefully, was listening his story. She wanted to told how her admirer to his care was so respectful, but she didn't want to interrupt his memories. I found a place where you and boy could stay during these days, started from the door. I tried to get in contact with your husband, but it wasn't possible. He didn't want to told her how all telephone's lines were broken everywhere. He didn't want to scare her. Why don't you think that it's not good to simply go to the hospital and try to find solution for this problem? She slowly asked. It is nothing wrong with you, he said short. That strong woman now stood in front of him as a small, weak girl. He didn't know what and why, but this time you have to listen me. It was his order. Few hours later, she was far away with her boy. Young man was standing in the middle of the dark room and asked himself what could happen if didn't expect that job. Down, it was possible to hear the voice and fights between groups and police. I didn't go out for a few days, and no one looked for me. Those period was as hell. Finish the story now, old professor. I couldn't understood, and I still don't where that huge hate and misunderstanding came from. We or we or they, those people trusted to freedom, but revolution turned to a blood waste. Instead to help to young, they helped to own self. Dominic couldn't realize about whom and them he was talking about. Who is who here? She was careful with the answer. Socialist against the terror. Every terror is something against we fight through the Second War. And now I ask myself, did we win at all? I'm afraid to consist real truth said. Dominic knew an answer, but she didn't want to comment or complain. It must be hard to find out how your victims were unuseful. That was everything what she gave as explanation as her understanding. Chapter 51. This is a hard book. Dominic was reading note which she wrote. Diamond sit across her and drank his tea. What did you two find out about that group? Are they any connection? She asked. Nothing except what is allowed to the public. Diamond's voice was distant as note as usual. Dominic didn't complain anything, but she felt very unpleasant. She was tired, afraid, shocked, and not in the mood to thought about reason of others' reactions. But Diamond's attitude touched her. How much you really know yourself was questioned like an electric light. I don't know. I don't think that anyone could be objective and realistic about oneself. Me, neither. She said the truth. Why do you ask that from others to be easy? You have to know that everyone has right for their own opinion and that you should accept it or not, but there's explanation to critical one. Diamond was very angry. He said something, but he didn't the same. But he did the same. You critic me? She couldn't hide that was insulted. He looked at her as an hunter, his victim, but didn't want to insist anymore. Never mind, everything will be told by own self one day. You'll understand, he said, but Dominic still didn't recognize something what relief was. It was Ananda as he threatened her as some small, stupid, and useful story and person. That was a hard feeling, painful and strong. She didn't mean that way. Chapter 52. Do I know you from somewhere? Young man turned to Shaw, who wanted to make conversation with him. He went outside after a few days of darkness room. Didn't know anyone who that could be or it was a trick. He was hum or hammer, and it was hard to find a food. He was hungry, and it was hard to find the food. Didn't feel that he could be spoke with anyone. I really think that I saw you somewhere. The woman over 50 said again, aloud, that everyone could hear her. Hurry, my young man, I have something important to tell you. Now she said with very careful voice. He didn't feel hungry anymore, started slowly to walk after him. Your friend sent me. Old lady walked a little bit in front of him. My friend? He was surprised. Where is he? Wasn't going on with him. What's going on with him? He wanted to find out everything about his friend. He's on the safe. It was a short answer. She opened her mouth to continue with other important story, but the face of the young man made her to change her mind. Sometimes it is so easy to understand and love one person, anyone, but there are people who are very hard to be with them, at least to love them, said old woman, and young man was frozen. She probably wanted something to told him, by his friend, and he wasn't so enough careful. That was my huge mistake. Instead to set she, I, said he, and the woman was wise. Or she expected that, because few days police came on the door with cover on my eyes. They took me somewhere. I didn't know where, but it was a long drive. Without any strong feelings, it was obviously that he was got over it. I didn't know well my city. I wasn't interested in geography. Yes, I had to know better place where I should be, but with cover on his eyes. Dominic knew that he wanted to make softer his story and terror in it. She knew that because her grandfather did the same. I don't know still, but anyway, when we arrived there, weren't possible to hurt. Only one laugh between the policemen. There were some military with strong East accent. He stood and stopped for a second and took a deep breath. I mustn't, but I have to tell you everything. They were together, my child. It was the clear words, but Dominic didn't understand. She couldn't ask, she was afraid. Next to every freedom would speak, she couldn't. It was hope that he would explain. It is true that if we insist so much on something as a refused means that we actually need, or secretly with so. I met many different kind of persons, sad, happy, evil, disappointed, but the only thing what I could refuse as different cry. Everyone cries. No one can't run away from own selves, from the own trust and universe which person's life lives through, beginning and the end. It was hard to explain what and how he felt at that moment, and the double younger person across him. Dominic felt the same, and that was obviously the confirm on his words. Chapter 53. Dominic stood in front of the picture at the hall. Tired people in different positions prayed for a piece of bread or something what painter wanted to look as a food were on it. It was more than sadness and anger mixed inside of Dominic. It is as warning that something should not happen. That was a voice by a young girl. Roommate, it was, and it has been, made during a revolution. No one knows who did it, but they thought how this is the best place for it to be. She had a nice and kind smile. Dominic paid attention on every move which she made, especially now, when he knew who that girl really was. You paid attention on every move which she made, especially now, when you knew who that girl really was. You know something about those happening. Dominic thought how their age should make conversation between them more easy. And she was right. Not me, but my aunt knows. And everyone here always talks about it. She explained it without any worry or fear. It was obviously that she wasn't a witness of real happening. Are you really interested in those things? That girl was absolutely educated or simply depressed. Her voice and note expressed something like that murder. Well, be careful because you know what happened. Girl stopped to spoke because door behind them opened. All those stories, one man said to the other. Dominic suggested that they could be reported. Who could trust in everything? They passed by two girls and the other one who didn't tell any word looked at Dominic. And then his view was for a long moment on the other girl. He analyzed her during a walk, but instead to return him a look, she turned aback. Excuse me, apologies to Dominic and left. The story stood to float in the air. Few minutes later, Dominic was in her room. She had plenty papers on her bed. There were so many stories, and really who and from where to start it to find reason for belief. I could be something or I could be nothing, said more for herself. Empty hopes, empty stories, nothing we could change. What happened, happened. But maybe I'll learn the lesson of the life. Dominic tried to find the meaning of a life. What end happened was following her destiny, or many there was something but needed her help and attention. First, the stories about her grandfather. She knew how to listen, but this is something. What she couldn't explain, why was over her too much. I need something normal. She really felt how nothing around her wasn't so in shape, maybe because of hate. Maybe that was the reason, maybe because of a wish for beginning somehow different. How all this would find a way out was a huge question. Dominic wanted that. This could be finished soon as possible. She missed her grandfather. She wanted to go back home. In that moment, couldn't imagine that this adventure would continue. Chapter 54. There is no any wish for a reason and reasonable. No try to find the understanding. Always the pressure and walking over emotional souls. Did you ever feel a strange, strong fear how something what was so important and interesting could disappear for a second? Asked Dominic during the dinner. You are not the same person as you were on the beginning. Leg wasn't rude. Oleg wasn't rude. He was worried. And you are not. Dominic was so upset that she didn't control herself. It is hard to watch people or their friends to suffer, and the reaction are different, but The only way to express the pain is the words, but with bad and hard one, we could make situation the worse than it is. So try to be a little bit nice would be useful. For the first time since they've met, Dominic saw Oleg as a sad and lost person. Listen your intuition. She still couldn't find a way to show him her sympathy. It wasn't right moment for talk, not only with her friends. It was same with anyone. I know that we are between two sides, proud and time which is passing fast, and when you turn, life could be close to the end. There is a question: do we do something because of ourselves? An opinion, how behind everything is something what is waiting for us, or to leave the ideas for future generation. Both of are allowed. There are some good and nice people who only wants happens to the others, and do you know why? Because of their own peace in soul. We are too young to think about a peace in soul. It is normal for age. Youth always asks for the adventure, but what about the others? What about the old one? Should they think about it, or just to pretend how life is still work for them? It is nice to be young in age and don't worry about anything. Dominic agreed with him. Life is only one, use it on love and on everything what suits to you. Oleg had a speech as he planned to leave somewhere. Are you here? And are you have something on your mind about the future? Asked Dominic. No, but it was something that I had to say. Leave it. I'll see you later. He saw a group of students who were coming to the room, and he wasn't in a mood to talk about anything anymore. Slowly stood up and touched the Dominic's hand and left. Dominic looked after him and knew that everything what he said was right but illusion. Someone didn't allow them to be free. Needs or just habits. Chapter 55.